Microsoft has spent 40 years pulling the same magic trick. They give you a version of Windows everybody loves, and then they follow it up with something that makes you question reality. Not every time, but enough times that it feels like a curse. And now we're in the most aggressive version of that cycle yet. Because Windows 11 isn't just the Windows version people complain about. It's the version Microsoft feels like it's forcing you to accept, even if your PC is fine, even if you liked Windows 10, and even if you never asked for your operating system to become a billboard for ads and AI experiments. So today, we're talking about how Windows 10 became the reliable backbone of the world, and how Windows 11 turned into Microsoft's most bloated, most condescending, most AI-shoved-in-your-face operating system. And the last part, what happened in 2026, is the part that really should make Microsoft nervous. Here's the pattern. Microsoft has always had this weird habit of making a beloved Windows release, then immediately following it with something that feels like a product review written by an angry focus group. People remember the good eras because they felt invisible. The best Windows versions didn't beg for attention, they just worked. That's what made them powerful. And the bad ones? The bad ones always had the same smell. Too much redesign, too much forcing, too much "we know better than you," and just enough chaos to make you miss the old version instantly. That's why Windows 11 hits such a nerve. It doesn't feel like a clean successor. It feels like Microsoft looked at the stability and trust of Windows 10 and said, what if we made this more restrictive, more cluttered, and more AI? If you want more tech stories like this, like and subscribe, because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Let's be fair for a second. Windows 10 was not perfect. It had telemetry debates, awkward updates, and its share of nonsense. But over time, it became something incredibly valuable, predictable. That matters more than people admit. For years, Windows 10 became the default backbone of work, school, gaming, offices, creators, home desktops, and old family laptops that refused to die. It wasn't exciting, and that was exactly why people trusted it. It felt like the version Microsoft had finally settled into, the one that would keep getting updated without blowing up the relationship every few years. And Microsoft absolutely helped create that expectation. Back in 2015, Microsoft evangelist Jerry Nixon said Windows 10 is the last version of Windows. And when The Verge asked Microsoft about it, the company didn't shut the idea down. Instead, Microsoft talked about Windows being delivered as a service with ongoing updates and continuous value. That line lodged into people's brains. It made users feel like Windows 10 was the platform, not just another stop on the ride. So even if Microsoft never carved it into stone tablets, a lot of users walked away with the same conclusion. This is it. This is the stable one. This is the one we're building around. And for years, that belief looked reasonable. Windows 10 stuck around. Businesses standardized on it. Consumers got used to it. Creators built workflows on it. And eventually, it stopped feeling like the current Windows and started feeling like the normal state of Windows itself. That's why the betrayal hit so hard. Because Microsoft didn't just release another version, they broke the emotional contract. The minute Windows 11 appeared, the whole illusion cracked. Suddenly, Windows as a service became, actually, here's a new major version anyway. Suddenly, the version people thought would quietly evolve forever had an expiration clock hanging over it. And now we know exactly where that clock landed. Microsoft says support for Windows 10 ended on October 14, 2025. Their official messaging is blunt. No more free software updates, no more security fixes, no more technical assistance. Your PC still works, but Microsoft recommends moving to Windows 11, buying a new PC if your hardware isn't eligible, or using the one-year extended security updates program to stretch protection into 2026. That's a brutal thing to tell hundreds of millions of people whose machines still function perfectly. Because when you strip away the marketing, the message sounds like this. Your computer is not broken. Your workflow is not broken. Your habits are not broken. But our roadmap says your machine is now spiritually obsolete. That's where the anger comes from. Not just change, forced change. And once users realized that the last version of Windows was not, in fact, the last version of Windows, all that old trust started turning into resentment. You didn't just upgrade people, you made them feel tricked. This is where Windows 11 stopped being a redesign and started feeling like punishment. Microsoft made TPM 2.0 a requirement for Windows 11. Their own support page says TPM 2.0 is required to run the OS, and their unsupported device notice warns that installing Windows 11 on uneligible hardware is not recommended, may cause compatibility problems, may leave you without support, and even mean you're not guaranteed updates. Microsoft literally recommends rolling back to Windows 10 on unsupported systems. And yes, Microsoft frames this as security. That part is real. TPM helps with things like identity protection and BitLocker, but users didn't experience it as a security lecture. They experienced it as a locked gate. Because millions of PCs out there are still fast enough for web, school, office work, media, even light creative use, but they got told they belong on the wrong side of the fence anyway. That's why the e-waste angle exploded. Reuters reported in late 2023 that according to Canalys research, the end of Windows 10 support could send about 240 million PCs towards disposal, with an estimated 480 million kilograms of e-waste, the equivalent of 320,000 cars. That's not a fringe number. That's a policy choice with physical consequences. And this is where Microsoft really lost people. Because if your computer still opens Chrome, edits documents, runs Zoom, plays video, and boots every morning, being told it's basically dead because of a hardware checklist is insulting. It feels like planned obsolescence wearing a security badge. And if that line hurts, good, because that's exactly how a lot of users heard it. As if the hardware lockouts weren't enough, Microsoft then kept doing the one thing nobody asks their operating system to do: sell them stuff. In 2024, The Verge reported Microsoft began rolling out ads in the Start menu for all Windows 11 users through app recommendations from the Microsoft Store. Microsoft's own update notes said the recommended section would show some apps from curated developers. The Verge called them what most users call them too: ads. And it wasn't just the Start menu. Microsoft's own support docs explain that Windows 11 includes settings for recommendations and offers, suggested content in settings, and even a Windows advertising ID that apps and advertising networks can use for personalized advertising experiences. Microsoft notes right on the page that turning off the advertising ID does not reduce the number of ads, it just may make them less relevant. Think about how insane that sentence is inside a desktop operating system. Then there was File Explorer. Yes, the thing people use to look at files. In 2022, The Verge reported Microsoft had tested an ad banner inside File Explorer, prompting users to check out Microsoft Editor. Microsoft later said the banner was experimental and not intended to be published externally, which is almost worse, because it tells you the company is absolutely thinking about ad space inside your file manager. That's the part that drives people crazy. When users buy a PC, they don't think they're buying a stage for Microsoft's growth hacks. They think they're buying a tool. And Windows 11 keeps forgetting the difference. Now we get to the part that really pushed this from annoying OS into stop touching my computer. Microsoft decided Windows 11 shouldn't just be an operating system anymore. It should be an AI vehicle. And in theory, that sounds exciting. In practice, it turned the operating system into a house where Microsoft kept stapling Copilot buttons to the walls. One of the clearest examples came from The Verge 2026 reporting. Microsoft had added so many Copilot entry points into Windows 11 apps that The Verge described the buttons as getting out of control. By March 2026, Microsoft had started removing what it literally called unnecessary Copilot entry points from apps like Snipping Tool, Photos, Widgets, and Notepad. Just pause there. If Microsoft has to publicly backpedal and remove unnecessary AI buttons from core apps, then yes, users were not imagining the bloat. And before that rollback, it kept getting more absurd. The Verge also reported on a new Share with Copilot button appearing in Windows 11 previews when hovering over open apps on the taskbar, letting users send the contents of Windows into Copilot Vision. The article's whole tone was basically, nobody asked for this. It also pointed out that Copilot buttons were already showing up in Paint, Notepad, the taskbar, on keyboards, and even on some PCs themselves. That's the thing Microsoft still doesn't get. People don't hate AI because it exists. They hate being chased around their desktop by AI they didn't ask for. They hate the feeling that every part of the operating system is being turned into a funnel for the next strategic priority. And then came recall.
Microsoft says Recall on Copilot Plus PCs can save snapshots of your active screen every few seconds when you opt in, build a searchable history, and let you jump back into things you previously saw later. After Backlash, Microsoft changed the architecture. It made Recall opt-in, removable, encrypted, bound to Windows Hello and TPM protections, and added sensitive content filtering. Those changes matter, but the reason they had to make those changes is the story. Users looked at "your PC will take snapshots of what you do so AI can remember it later" and said absolutely not. That backlash was not some anti-tech tantrum. It was self-defense. Because an operating system that feels like it's always watching, always suggesting, always summarizing, always hovering, and always pushing its chatbot into another surface doesn't feel like empowerment. It feels like occupation.
If you're still watching, hit like and subscribe, because this is exactly what happens when a company mistakes AI strategy for user experience. And this is where Microsoft's whole approach starts to look outdated. Because in 2026, the smartest creators are not begging for more AI welded into the taskbar. They're moving towards standalone AI that they control. That's a huge distinction. Instead of wanting the operating system itself to become the product, creators increasingly want AI that can sit above the OS, work across apps, and stay modular. Tools like GenSpark AI Workspace 3.0 are explicitly being positioned not as another OS button, but as an AI employee living in its own cloud computer, working across messaging, research, scheduling, meetings, browser workflows, and team apps. That's a very different philosophy from here another Copilot button in Notepad. And on the model side, platforms like Claude Opus 4.6 are being pitched around reliability, sustained reasoning, coding, agents, documents, spreadsheets, presentations, and long context work. In other words, powerful AI you can deliberately choose for hard tasks, instead of AI being sprayed into every corner of the operating system whether you want it there or not. That is the pivot. People don't necessarily want less AI, they want less trapped AI. They want AI as a tool belt, not AI as wallpaper. And that's why Microsoft Windows 11 strategy feels so strangely behind the moment. The future is looking more modular, more agentic, more intentional, while Windows 11 spent years trying to make AI unavoidable. That contrast is brutal. Because when users willingly open standalone AI tools to do focused work and then close them when they're done, that feels empowering. When the OS itself won't stop servicing AI, that feels needy. So what is Windows 11 really? It's not just the successor to Windows 10, it's the version that made millions of users realize Microsoft no longer sees Windows as a quiet tool. It sees Windows as a platform to enforce hardware transitions, upsell services, test ad surfaces, and push its AI strategy right into the center of your desktop life. That is why the anger is so emotional. People didn't love Windows 10 because it was sexy. They loved it because it got out of the way. Windows 11 did the opposite. It got in the way. It interrupted, it filtered, it recommended, it required, it advertised. And then it tried to become your AI companion whether you invited it or not. And here the line Microsoft really needs to hear. The best operating systems disappear. The worst ones keep reminding you they work there. That's why so many people still talk about Windows 10 with affection and Windows 11 with exhaustion. Because one felt like a foundation, the other feels like a campaign. And if Microsoft isn't careful, Windows 11 legacy won't be AI innovation. It'll be the version that taught an entire generation of users to stop trusting what upgrade means. If you remember the moment Windows 11 lost you, the TPM wall, the start menu ads, the Copilot creep, the recall nightmare, whatever it was, drop it in the comments. And subscribe for more tech history, corporate pressure campaigns, and the stories big companies really wish people would forget.